Okay, we have a question from Anuradha Ravi from Singapore, who's asked a question which has been asked quite a few times, and this is not specific to this party, but to multiple parties in India, which is that, are we seeing the end of Congress? How can India revive an opposition? Congrats, Saurabh, big fan of the series. Thank you so much, Anuradha. This question has been doing the rounds for a while, but yeah.
Yeah, there is no good answer to it. I keep hoping that the Congress will get its act together and will revive, only because when you have such a strong leader and such a strong political center, you need an opposition. At the moment, for better or for worse, the Congress is our only national opposition. So after it went down to second humiliating defeat, I thought it would get its act together. But everything the Congress has done has worked against that. Rahul Gandhi, first of all, announced that he was stepping down as party president, took responsibility for the defeat, which I thought was a great and honorable thing to do. But once you step down, you set in motion a process to find your successor. They've done no such thing. Rahul Gandhi continues to call the shots. People are more and more upset within the Congress. And with each election, whether it was Bihar, Telangana, the municipal polls now, in every election, the Congress just does worse and worse. So I hope to God something happens and the Congress revives. But at the moment, it's hard to be optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congress, see, this without doubt is the lowest Congress has ever been. Like they lost in 98, 99 also, and people wrote them off. People said the return of Sonia Gandhi will not work for them, but it did. They eventually came back in 2004. Surprisingly, again came back in 2009, 2009. But they've never been this low. And
Yeah.
like we said, the most surprising part is you see that there is an ill patient, but no one is actively working on the recovery and medication of that patient. It's just there. And even with the small glimmers of hope, in for example, the Rajasthan Assembly election, the MP Assembly election, you see even those are being, those small medicine also are, you're doing something which is sort of negating that also. The entire old age versus new guard debate, and then Jyotiraj Scindia quitting Congress, uh, assembly election after assembly election, setbacks after setbacks. I don't know what is up. And as someone, like Veer said, as someone who really wants a great opposition at the center and on the Indian level, it's very surprising, because this is one of our greatest political parties with such rich legacy and all, and it's just going nowhere. You have great chief minister like Amrinder Singh, you have some good regional leaders, some people who are respected here and there, but you don't have a national leader. You don't know what's happening now. Ahmad Patel is gone. I don't know. Every month, every week, I see some Congress related news that disappoints me,
Yeah.
because I don't know. It's a topic very close to my heart, because my father was very proud that I was named Varun because Sanjay Gandhi's son was also called Varun.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
He was like, Sanjay Gandhi says baat kam zyada, and I'm like, Arey. And I didn't know then much. Much later when I started reading about him, I'm like, Papa, बहुत गलत आदमी पे proud होते हैं. इसलिए तुमको पता है संजय गांधी के बेटे का नाम भी वरुण है, मेरे बेटे का नाम भी वरुण है. I'm like, oh, that's great. But then I started reading about it. I'm like, Papa, don't say this to everyone. It's not a thing to be proud of. And then my comedy partner is called Rahul. So the joke never ends. Now we are Rahul and Varun. But we are both not Gandhis and very proud of it.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, also the Varun that you're talking about is not even in the Congress anymore, so that's
Yeah.
like even more proof of the thing. But this is now there's so much like to rip on you about, which is that you're the Varun Gandhi
This
of
is
Indian
an
politics.
unofficial theory. My name is Varun because my father's name is Arun and my uncle's name is Tarun. So Arun, Tarun, and Varun. But he was just very happy with the coincidence. He was like, oh, Indira Gandhi. And my birthday is the same as Indira Gandhi. It's
Oh
19
my
November.
God.
19th November.
19 November.
Same birthday as Zeenat Aman. You can say that also.
Yeah,
Same
Zeenat
birthday
Aman.
as Dara Singh.
Yeah, Dara Singh, Meg Ryan,
Yeah,
Sushmita Sen. A lot of like,
that's right.
yeah.
It's a very significant day for birthdays.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This is basically okay. So I think what we're trying to say is that India needs an opposition, right? And this doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean because, and this is actually this comes back to a question that I had written down, which is that so I, as I said, enjoyed the last conversation. I'm enjoying this one as well, and I've sent it to a couple of people, and they're like, I don't know, we don't want to watch this because Veer Sanghvi is a Congressy. So, and that's something that I assume that you get on Twitter a lot and stuff like that. I think what we are also having in this conversation is about having an opposition, because you don't want a party to be a juggernaut across a country where there's just like no room for any this thing. So how do you also respond to people saying stuff like that? And again, it comes back to the labeling thing that we already spoke about.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that people call me a Congressee, because the last few days I have been trolled so relentlessly on Twitter by Congressies who are calling me a Modi supporter. So that's one good thing, to be called names by both sides. But essentially, I don't support any political party, but I do support a certain set of values. And those are the values that you don't treat everyone with a certain amount of prejudice, that minorities have as much right to live in this country as anybody else. So there is that free speech is important, that authoritarian governments, whether it's Indira Gandhi or anybody else, are bad. So if you take those values, you could once upon a time have said those were the values of the Congress party. I'm not sure you can say it any longer. So basically, when it comes to Indian political parties, I have no sympathies for either side. I just stick to my own values.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. By the way, we've hit
People need to
10,000 likes.
understand.
Sorry, go ahead.
People
Kelly.
need to understand. People need to understand that when you oppose the government, that does not necessarily mean you support the Congress. Very
Right.
basic thing. People need to understand that. And also, when you support the Congress in something, basically we just want a strong opposition. Thirdly, you are in a democracy, you are allowed to support different parties for different things that they say. We, I mean, we should be allowed to do that as a citizen of a democratic country. That if a particular party supports certain thing in farmer agitation or anti-corruption, you are allowed to say that. You are allowed to support BJP during Anna movement, but also not allowed to support them when it comes to love jihad. It's completely okay. That is what an educated intellectual adult in a democracy is supposed to do. This is too much.
The love jihad thing is an interesting one, because I think right now the news came about the UP police storming into a wedding and interrupting it and whatever. So what do you think about this whole love jihad thing? Because on one hand, I think the Supreme Court said about live-in relationships. There was a couple that had a live-in relationship, and some parents were opposed, and the Supreme Court said that they're within the rights to express whatever form of love. And then the other hand, you have the love jihad thing where the police is coming in to intervene on a wedding. So what do you think about that entire law and everything there?
Whenever you raise this question with relatively sensible people who support the BJP, you're always given the same story, that there are many underage girls who are led astray, etc. Now, you don't need a love jihad law to protect underage girls from being seduced away. There are already enough laws. What you're doing with love jihad is taking a lunatic fringe idea that all of us laughed at, the suggestion that Hindu women who are the flower of purity will be taken away by evil Muslim men. I mean, it's the kind of low level, dirt level stuff that you never thought anybody would take seriously. It's horrifying that it's become government policy, that it's been legislated in many states, or at least in one state and possibly in a second state. Already people don't realize this, but if, say, you're a Hindu, I'm a Hindu, we want to get married to other Hindus, there's no problem. You can go and have a wedding anywhere. Later, you can go to a registrar, show pictures of your wedding, and he will issue you a certificate. If you get married under the Special Marriages Act, which is usually used by mixed couples, people who can't do a Hindu wedding, you have to go and beg for an appointment. Then you have to sign a notice which says, I'm kidding you not, I am neither lunatic nor idiot. Then they take this notice, they put it up on the board in the collectorate or wherever for 30 days, during which people can object and can do anything. Then you go back, and it's like any government office, like going to pay a traffic fine. They'll take little bribes, they'll push you around. In fact, there's just been a case in Bombay about people taking bribes to facilitate this. You are made to feel already like for a mixed couple, getting married is a big deal in India. When you make it worse with something like love jihad, what are you telling the minorities? You're just re emphasizing the majoritarian nature of your vision of India.
Yeah. Okay. We have quite a few more. Chinmay Sardesai, institution barely holding fort against Trump in the US. Does Indian institution have any chance of withstanding similar attempt against institutions?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, The honest answer is we'll have to wait and see. We are in uncharted waters. It's been a long time since we've been in this kind of situation. The last time we had a leader this powerful, it was Indira Gandhi. And Indira Gandhi was elected on the basis of certain promises she made to the electorate. When she didn't keep those promises by 73, which is what, just 2 years after her victory, there were riots and revolts in the street. By 75, she had to declare an emergency to keep herself in power. This government is as powerful, I think, as Indira's government was at its peak, though without the emergency. And nobody seems to hold them accountable for performance, whether it's demonetization, it's the nature of the lockdown without any kind of notice. People don't really seem to mind. In Bihar, according to psephologists, many of the people who are migrants who walked home blame Nitish but voted for the BJP because they didn't hold the BJP responsible for the lockdown. So what you have, and it's not just the fault of the government, it's a concern about the electorate, is an electorate that is so much in love with the regime that it's difficult to have any checks and balances. In that system, how strong can institutions be if they can there be combative with the government? We don't know. We've never been in this situation before.
No, the only input I want to make, Saurabh, is, and we did refer to emergency earlier, so it's not that we don't have a precedence in terms of our institution being used for the government. And there are two things. One is sometimes and TN session is a great example of how election commission for a long time wasn't even relevant in India, unless he came and he suddenly made it relevant. People are like, oh, tum bhi hote ho kya? Because it was just for granted. So if we do have such powerful people leading these institutions, I would say that would make a huge difference. And there are numerous examples in Indian history of such strong individuals who came and made their mark. My only concern, and this is a slight concern as of now in the last couple of years, is that there are two institutions who have remained insulated to all this, which is judiciary and armed forces. Largely, I mean. And whenever I read any news of them being affected with the government, that really, really bothers me. When you have a chief justice who becomes a Rajya Sabha member later, when you have a defense chief who becomes a Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha member later, that sort of bothers me as a citizen. Because I read a recent news about the chief of defense staff not attending an Indian Navy Day event and rather attending an event in Gorakhpur done by UP government, or him attending an MG Motors event wearing the army uniform. These are the small news that bothers me more than any other institutional news, because uh, I mean, it's a sad truth, but all of us have somehow accepted that institutions like CBI or like ED or IB will always be run by the government, and they won't be as neutral as they're expected to be. But when it comes to judiciary and armed forces, these are the two things that really, really bothers me. If we compromise those institutions, then I don't know. Then the idea of India is compromised, I feel.
But is it? Do you think that it's happening? Do you think that it's happening like over the
Yes,
last? Yeah.
I think there are very worrying signs. I think the chief of army staff who he's talking about had very, very serious problems with the Manmohan Singh government because they asked him to retire on a certain date. And he said, no, it's not my birthday. I have a second birthday. And this is the date where I should retire. It got to the stage, and this is the fault of the Manmohan Singh government and A.K. Antony, who was then the defense minister, that the chief was not talking to the civilian government. He then retired and went off immediately, became a BJP candidate, and became a minister. To me, I mean, that's unacceptable politicization. He's talked about the Chief Justice. You had a Chief Justice who had a controversial role where he did many judgments that were considered to be pro government. No sooner had he stepped down than they didn't even bother with an election. They asked the president to nominate him to the Rajya Sabha. These are not enough to make a trend, but these are worrying indications, and I share KV's concerns.
Okay. So okay, we have just a couple of things to announce. Again, we've hit 10,000 likes, which is great. Thanks a lot for your likes. To tell you, Shoaib Akhtar will be coming. I will about an hour or so from now. Next up, we're going to be talking to the YouTube members. We're also going to talk to Angad Singh Ranial, Akash Mehta, and Anu Menon about cricket. Because there's a match happening right now, which is like, you know what, over the last year or so, I have just been, the only things I'm doing on Twitter is talking about personal stuff and cricket. Just like this is the easiest thing for my mental state of being, to just avoid everything else. While I'm reading every like other things, just trying to avoid it. So that's coming up. Thanks a lot for your support. I'll read a couple more questions. KV, you have any questions? Yeah, anything, or should I just take from the?
I will always have questions for Veer. I'll ask a fun question, Veer, which I always ask to whenever I get this opportunity. And this is one of those what ifs question that I always have. Anything in the last, like you said, from 79, when you actively started following Indian politics, so 79 to now, to 2020, in the last 40 years, any moment, any what if moment that is your favorite, where you like, if this had happened, or if this had not happened, our Indian political history or Indian history would have been very different. Like uh, if Rajiv Gandhi hadn't died, for example. So any of these if and but moment that you can describe to us.
I think if Indira Gandhi had not been assassinated in 1984, there is a very good chance that the Congress would have lost the election that was due in a few months. You would have had Chandrasekhar, somebody like that, as Prime Minister. Indian politics would have been very different. That sense of dynasty that the son automatically takes over would have been nipped in the bud. I think that's a very important what if moment. If Vajpayee had won the 2004 election, which Sonia Gandhi ultimately defeated him in alliance, Indian history would have been very different because a moderate form of the BJP, Vajpayee and Advani, would have taken over and would have continued to run India. The harder faction of the BJP, which later backed Mr. Modi and is currently holding sway, would not have had any reason to come forward. If in the second election that the UPA won, 2009, when it was widely assumed that they would do at best as well as 2004 or more likely lose, if they hadn't won the number of seats that they got, that they didn't need the support of the left, history would have been very different because the plan then was that Pranab Mukherjee would have become prime minister, Manmohan Singh would not have become prime minister. And if you'd had an effective, strong prime minister, would you have had the government crippled by the Anna movement? Would you have had the scams? If you had a strong government and you didn't have the scams and all of that, would there have been the vacuum that Mr. Modi exploited? So many, many what if moments.